Hi everyone, today we're going to talk about market research. This is just continuing from your previous week's presentation. That was more like an introduction to what market research is. We did cover a lot of introductory concepts, but in this specific presentation we'll go into more detail. The reason I'm using this, capturing your audience, I always tell students that if you were to tell me exactly or describe who your target audience is for your specific book or for a company's books, you would have to be able to basically frame it. What I mean with that is if you have a photograph of someone on your desk at home and you need to tell someone who is that person. What are they like? What do they like? What don't they like? Etc. Now, that's exactly the same principle I would like you guys to apply to your market research that you're going to do for your book specifically, but also in the wider context. So how do you, if you have to take a photo, a snapshot of exactly who your customer is, what would he or she look like? Now, a SWOT analysis. When you think about what a SWOT analysis is, I don't know how familiar you are with business communication or business studies, but basically a SWOT analysis is when you look at something in terms of its strengths, its weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. In this example, you'll look at your book that you are commissioning, but as a publishing house as well, they can look at their whole brand, the strength of the brand, the weakness, the opportunities, the threats, or are they looking at it per book, as for example this new trade title, the strength of it lies in the fact that it is written by a well-known best-selling author. It's a great genre, that people usually buy, crime or romance, or maybe, which is a really popular one these days, sci-fi. The weakness is maybe that there are a lot of other books like this, or the author is quite known for his or her writing style, and it may be that the weakness is that this book is not really something different to what it's already available or to what the author has produced previously. Or a weakness could be that the storyline is maybe, although it's a well-known and a best-selling author, the story may not actually be as great or as good as some of his other titles. An opportunity would be, if you look at it another way, the opportunity could be that this is a title that basically addresses a certain topic or a social phenomena or issue in a different and a new way that maybe people would really enjoy, as they're so used to a subject matter being treated exactly the same way. So there may be opportunity in publishing different genres or things in different ways. Or it could be, their opportunity could be that they are co-publishing with another author, which maybe opens up for the opportunity of a new market that you're attracting. Or the opportunity could also be that this kind of book lends itself towards incorporating links and ebook versions or online game that you can add to it. Any of the above. All right. Threats, for example, that can be anything in the pest factor, like they're going to increase VAT, which would make the prices for books more expensive, which would make, this book quite costly or pricey in terms of people who don't necessarily have a big dispensable discretionary income. Or a threat could be that there are so many competitors all jumping on the bandwagon of a specific trend that this book is following and yours may be left behind. Or a threat could also be that there's a newcomer in the industry, or there's a new debut author who is taking the world by storm. So a SWOT analysis is always good to look at a situation or a product or a service or a brand or a book or whatever it should be. When we look at your market size as well, what is the market size for your specific company or your specific books? Now, that is very difficult usually to estimate if you are a trade book publisher. As you guys already know, it's not as easy as opposed to academic publishing or educational textbook publishing, where you have a specific number of enrolled students for a course, or there are, the Department of Basic Education tells you, okay, I need 20,000 books for grade 4 pupils of geography. Whereas trade, it's really trend dependent, likes and dislikes. There are so many genres available, so it makes it difficult to really estimate what your market size is. What you can do is you can go once again and look at historical records and see, all right, so for a typical fiction title, we print 4,000 and usually there's a reprint of 2,000. So let's say we have an average readership of 5,000 to 6,000 people for this specific genre. Not all of these things are as clear cut. There is no specific formula to work out these things, but you have to kind of gauge based on information that's at your disposal in order to decide what is actually the market size. The market value. So how much value does this market actually have? Now, in that sense, do they have buying power? Are you targeting a higher LSM, which is the living standard measure, although they changed it now in the beginning, I think since 2018 or 19, but I'll talk about that in another slide, another presentation. Or are you aiming at a lower income group? For example, you are producing low-cost coloring books with short stories in that you can sell at the grocery stores for 20 Rand. As opposed to a beautiful coffee table book that has photographs of wildlife and lodges, and you're targeting the tourist market or someone from a higher income group. So what is the bargaining power or the value of your market? Your market share. To use the example of Penguin Random House now acquiring Lapa Publishers, in the speech, Steve Connolly, CEO of Penguin Random House South Africa, said that this is now not the correct estimates, but he did say, for example, Lapa had 15% of the Afrikaans fiction market share, and Penguin Random House had, 50%. Now, when they get together and they merge, now obviously they'll have so much bigger, slice of the pie in terms of fiction now that they basically joined forces. So what is the market share of your specific publishing house and your specific book? It's just things that you need to think about, whereas certain publishers are better in publishing in certain subject fields than others. Mujaji Books maybe have the biggest market share in terms of the kind of titles that they publish, which is more African writers and feminist writing, although they may have competition from Blackbird Books, or is it equally divided? Yes, so that's basically what market share is about. And then obviously competition. How much competition is in your market? So for example, if you think about a publishing house context, how many trade publishers are in South Africa who are all fighting for the same piece of pie, right? How many people read in South Africa and how many people are you actually attracting with your books? Or could it be competition in terms of the genre? Who is your main competitor in terms of crime books if you are thinking of commissioning a crime title or a romance title or a children's book title? Your readership profile. Now, what does that mean? All right, the readership profile, you can see there I have two photos. Now, the one on the top is a lady reading a little book, and she seems like she's in her early 20s, and then the guy there at the bottom. Once again, if you have to capture your audience, if you have to frame them, who exactly will they be? So say, for example, that lady on top is a young business professional. She just entered the workforce. She completed a professional degree, and she's going into the workforce to start her job. Now, I need to know, who is she? Basically, what is her age group? That's where you get to where it's called, what are the demographics of the market? So demographics are basically age, race, education level, income, language, etc., etc. It can even include geographical location. So I can, for example, say, okay, so she's probably finished the degree, maybe an honors, but she's definitely in her 20s. She entered the workforce, which means now she has access to more funds that she would have had being a student. But still remember, it's entry level, so it's not to say that she's a CEO already, but she does have a little bit of spending money. What is the size of the market? How many other young professional ladies are out there? Race is not that important necessarily if you are commissioning a book, say for example, on women in the workplace in the 20th century, or young business women in the workplace, or be the babe boss in the boardroom. Right, that's a cool title actually. So then definitely the focus will be more on gender, because you focus specifically on women's struggles. First of all, being young women entering a corporate environment, and then obviously the gender-based issues, but also with business savvy attached to it. But race wouldn't necessarily play a role there. If race played a role, you would have, for example, commissioned a book that is something that's very cultural or language dependent, and that would relate to a specific culture. All right, I remember once I had a student, Solia, and she commissioned a book. Was it her or was it someone else? Sorry, but I can't remember now. But she commissioned a book that was basically focusing on a cultural, a Muslim religion, whereas places where you can eat, where there are entertainment, traveling options, etc., but specifically for people of the Muslim faith, which I thought was very interesting because it's very targeted, it's very niche. She knew exactly who her target audience was. All right, so who will buy this product? What is the size of the market? What are the demographics of this market? What are the needs of this market? All right, so there's a difference between a want and a need that I explained in the previous presentation. A want is something that has desire attached to it. So you would like to have it, it would add value to your life. It's something that you really, you dream of having. Whereas a need is a little bit stronger, where the emphasis is on, I need this to complete my degree, or I need this to be a successful young business professional, or I need this, like for example, a textbook to complete my economics degree. What are their book buying habits? All right, she has a little bit more of spending money that she can spend now. Is she someone who usually does online purchases, because now she's working, she doesn't have as much time to go to shops and buy and browse books? Is her book buying habits that she doesn't necessarily read fiction, but she loves non-fiction? So, and especially now that she wants to buy books that would help her advance in her career, she would obviously focus more on non-fiction buys. Usually we find that non-fiction buys are more on ad hoc and spontaneous and sporadic kind of ways, as opposed to people who love reading fiction, and every time a new book in the romance genre is released, they immediately go and buy it. So you need to know what your market is about exactly, right? So even the guy here at the bottom, and how much will they pay? And then the guy here at the bottom, he may be a guy that loves poetry, loves going out, sitting by the lake, thinking about things, pondering things, reading Penguin literary classics, has a little bit of spending money, as he also looks like he's a bit older. Maybe he's still, an honest student, but maybe he has a professional job, and, he just likes reading all kinds of other literary classics to, break the mundane day-to-day stuff that he does as an IT professional or a doctor or whatever. I don't know. But that's important that you know exactly, that you know how to describe your audience or the target audience, because the better you'll be able to do that, the better your product will fit. So yes, just an example of other kinds of people that you may think of. Is it little girls? Maybe they're going to school, and it is you're helping to teach them compassion for their friends at school, and who may have disabilities, or who are from different races and cultures, maybe including diversity as a theme for young kids going to school. Is it the guy on the right-hand side that is maybe doing a theology degree, and he's trying, and he's learning, and he needs a textbook, a theology textbook? Or is it here in the middle? I just have this long story attached to it. I'll tell you about it some other time. But what's interesting about this is what I try to convey with this. Or is it maybe a lady who loves to read books that are based on the Victorian period, and that they love reading, Jane Eyre and Pride and Prejudice, and once again very literary things, but with a kind of a feminist or feminist oppression kind of view, period dramas. Maybe that is something or someone that you are catering for in your specific publishing business.